Welcome to Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It, the podcast where we dive deep into the journey from vision to reality. I'm Kelly Jackson, your guide on this path of self-discovery, transformation, and intentional living. Here, we explore everything from mindset shifts and personal growth to spiritual alignment and entrepreneurship, sharing insights, stories, and actionable wisdom to help you live a life in harmony with your dreams. Every episode will dig into what it means to not only dream big, but to actually consciously create the life you envision. Let's turn your dreams into real life. Hello, friends. Welcome back. We've got a really wonderful episode today. However, I want to start off with a bit of a disclaimer. This episode, we're going to say this is for mature audiences. And the reason I'm going to say that, the topic today is my celibacy story as an adult. And so we're going to be talking about everything that led up to this choice, and then the experience of a 7+ year celibacy journey, and then how it ended. And then everything that's happened since it ended, we're going to save that for a whole nother episode. So this is going to be my celibacy story as an adult. And because of the nature of everything I just mentioned, I don't want to feel restricted in what I'm going to open up about. So we're going to classify this episode as one that is for mature audiences. If you listen to it, because I don't even know what all I'm going to say yet. As you know, this is like Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It unplugged, because I'm just here having an organic conversation with you. So if you listen to it and you decide that there's a teen in your life who would benefit from whatever we end up talking about, by all means, use your discernment, share it with them. I'm going to say here right off the bat, though, this is for mature audiences. Okay? Who's ready? I'm ready. So, before we dive into the celibacy story, let's lay it all out. So, it was a 7+ year celibacy journey, nearly 7.5 years. And during that time, before embarking on it, it was one of these, instead of looking for the right person, I'm going to become the right person. And perhaps you've heard me say this before, that while on this celibacy journey, I became an expert on self-love. And the reason I say that is because I really and truly mastered the art of self-love. And this was coming from a place of no self-love, like little to no self-worth or self-love or self-compassion, right? And to completely transform into someone who embodies self-love and truly, really and truly feels and embodies self-love. And self-love uni is what I was creating that program as I was having these life experiences, as I was going through it, right? And I put it all together in a way that I felt like would be able to best help anyone who is ready for it. And it will meet you wherever you are, wherever you are. And I know that some of you are like curious. You're curious about it. You're like, I want to know more. I'm curious. And this is what I'm really excited to announce. Coming up here very soon in December, I'm going to be doing a Power of Self-Love Week. And this is going to be a transformative week-long journey. And it's going to be live calls every day that week, Monday through Friday. It's going to be really amazing, totally free. And it's going to be transformative. And I'm going to invite you to come and I'm going to tell you more about it. And it's going to be a great way to wrap up the year. It's like right there between the holidays and right before the new year. And my gift to you, I'm really excited about it. We'll talk more about that later. First, let's talk about how I even got to the point where I felt like I was like, I'm in a place where I can help guide others on their self-love journey, right? Because there was a time when I did not like who I saw when I looked in the mirror. And not even that I didn't like her. I didn't love her. And there were some times I probably even felt like I hated her. And that's not a good feeling to have, right? And so this story is going to kind of go through all of that. And I'm going to tell you, part of me being able to sit here and share this story today is because of all of the inner work that I've done and the shadow work that I've done especially. And the thing about shadow work is me being able to share this part of my story, it's not some shadow aspect that I feel ashamed of anymore, because there was a point in time when I was carrying shame, some really low vibrational energies around some of the stories that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And it's because of the intentional journey of self. It's because of the work that I've done and the work that I am sharing with you and the work that we'll be doing in the Power of Self-Love Week, right? It's because of all of this kind of work and intention that I'm able to sit here today and share my story with you without feeling the shame or the embarrassment. And I can own it and I can sit here and be like, yes, this is my story. It is. And this is the shift that happened, right? And so I'm excited to share this with you. So I think to tell this story, where do you start? I think I'm going to start with childhood. I think that's a good place to start. And again, if you're new, if this is your first time listening, if you haven't already heard this, I'm going to say this again so that you can hear it. I have a wonderful relationship with my parents. My parents are great. I love my parents. For the last 9 years, we've been doing multi-generational living. My 2 daughters and I live on the same property as my parents. So I have that, along with this celibacy journey, were both really intentional choices to do the healing work, to step into a place of owning the healing that I needed to do, and to say, I'm not going to run from it. I'm not going to hide from it. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to take accountability for, like responsibility for my part. Like what is it that I can do? Have you heard that said that, it's not your fault what happened maybe in your childhood, or your trauma is not your fault. However, it is your responsibility to heal. And so that is, my parents were always doing the best they could. And I know that now. And this is why I'm so glad that I did make that intentional choice to stay there and work through our differences. And initially, there were, when I was going through my shift, when I was first beginning this intentional journey of self and beginning to step into my true self and unbecome a lot of the things that I was, take off a lot of the masks and all of the stuff, some of the beliefs that I recognized were not mine, but they had been indoctrined or had passed down, or just I'd been conditioned to believe these things, and I was starting to release them. And as I was going through this transformation and these shifts, there was definitely pushback from friends and family, including my parents there, where we all were, because it was so different. And I had to keep going through it all. And I'm so glad that we stayed and all did the work together. And that's part of what we'll be getting into later too, about relationships. But when the relationships in your life and everyone is willing to grow together, right? Independently and then collectively, that's where the magic happens. And so I'm going to be sharing a couple things about my childhood. And again, keep in mind, mom and dad doing the best they could, right? So I grew up in a home where we didn't talk about sex or your body. We just didn't talk about it. It wasn't talked about. We didn't talk about puberty. We didn't talk about sex, intimacy. It was just not a topic. And again, that wasn't a topic that their parents had opened up to them about. And so they just probably weren't comfortable opening up to us about it, me and my sister. So that was so at home, I'm going to lay it out, start it by saying that. So growing up in a home, even just we didn't talk about your bowel movements, or if you had gas on your stomach, or you know what I'm saying? Anything about your body, not just sex or puberty, just your body in general. We just didn't really talk about it. And then in our home, I don't have memories of it wasn't where we weren't like an I love you family. So I wasn't really hearing I love you. Now that doesn't mean my parents didn't love us, because they did. And different people show their love in different ways. But again, if you weren't modeled, so let's say their parents weren't saying I love you, modeling affection and everything, and then here we come, they have children, me and my sister. And so again, It wasn't a home where there was a lot of I love you being said. And it wasn't a home where there was affection. It wasn't like a hugging family, right? So I was diagnosed with depression at 11 years old. And then, right, the anxiety, the ADD, all of this stuff all came. And I'd already had like gut health issues that were also starting at that young age. So I never had a boyfriend or anything. So I graduate high school. I have my first boyfriend like the second semester of senior year of high school, and have sex for the first time with this boyfriend like after graduating high school. And that was all a positive experience. Nothing about that was a negative experience. It was a wonderful, positive experience. And here's the thing though. And that relationship, it just didn't last. It didn't end bad. It just didn't last. I became really promiscuous. So I graduated high school at 17. For the next 2 years that I was in college, the first 2 years of college, well, after high school and into college, I became really promiscuous. And I had no self-worth, no self-love. And I was just looking for that validation, right? Looking for that love. And I was doing it in all the wrong ways. And we're going to circle back around to this, but when I was 19, I met the girl's dad. And we dated for 5 years. We're married for 10. And for that 15 years, I was faithful to him for 15 years. Then the last 5 years of the marriage were, I'm going to call it loveless. Like it was loveless. There was no intimacy there or anything. And when we divorced, 4 months after the divorce, that's when it kind of hit me. I was like, I'm ready for something. And it was kind of at that point, I'm ready for sex with no strings attached, because it was like I had been faithful for 15 years in this marriage, since I was a teenager. And the last 5 years, it was not like a love, passion type of situation. And then for 4 months, it was nothing, because I had left and I was ready. And I had mentioned this to a girlfriend, a dear girlfriend. That's kind of how I was feeling. And so she said, I think I might know somebody that would like be interested in that situation, like the sex with no strings attached thing. I was like, okay. So she made the phone call, made the connection, and we did some texting back and forth, sexting back and forth, whatever. And look, this was new, because this was when I was dating before the relationship that ended up being a marriage. Dating was totally different. That was 15 years before. So as you can imagine, over the course of 15 years, the way that dating happens, that changes, right? So it was the texting and the back and forth flirting, knowing that this was, that the whole thing was just the idea to hook up. And in my mind, I think I'm thinking that this is going to be some I have expectations. Let's put it that way. I have expectations, maybe without even realizing it. So we don't even live in the same state. We make plans to drive and meet at a halfway point. And to make a long story short, this weekend ends up being like really unfulfilling. And I thought it was what I wanted, and it wasn't. And I thought that it was going to be the answer, to the problems I was feeling at the time, and it wasn't. And it was not because of this person, it was because of I went into it as my shadow self, right? I went into it presenting myself a certain way. And deep down, I wanted connection and I wanted romance and I wanted love and passion and I wanted all of these things. I know that's what I wanted, but the way I was presenting myself and all my shadow aspects and the energetically where I was in my life, that is not what I was putting out. And so the version, the situation that I attracted, the whole situation that I attracted was really like let me put it, it was one of these situations where I think the room and the valet for both people and both vehicles and maybe even some of the food, it all got put on my bill. Like it was one of these sorts of things. Like I was energetically, I was so not aligned, right? And I was wanting conversation and connection, and it was he and I were not in the same place, and we had different expectations, and I understood in hindsight, because of the way I showed up and presented myself, I understood why this wasn't aligned, right? But so it was just not what I thought it was going to be. And that goes both ways. I'm not just saying me, right? He and I both agreed it was not what we maybe hoped or thought it would have been. And so then, did I go home and be like, well, let me do a little inner work. Let me take a little break. Let me figure out what I really want and who I really am outside of this marriage and being all of this identity that I had had for so long. No, friends, I didn't do that. No, I went online and made a dating profile instead. And so I was like, I'm going to try online dating. And somehow that is simultaneously a way to build your ego up and completely tear your ego down, all at the same time. It was the wildest experience ever. And again, I hadn't really started this intentional journey of self yet. And so this is kind of what was really starting it. I had started doing some personal development about 2 years before the marriage ended, but hadn't really gotten into any of the metaphysical stuff yet. And so I set up this online dating profile, and I remember one of the things, and I want to mention this too, because this has been another big shift that's happened. At the time, this is how, I'm so glad this came to me. This is how, I want to give you an idea of my level of consciousness, my theme of consciousness at the time. So back around the time I was setting up that profile, I was operating under the belief system that I needed to use filters on all of my photos. There was some sort of app that was trending at the time, and some girlfriends had told me about it, and I had put it on my phone, and it was kind of, at the time, at least amongst, at the time, the circles where I was at the time, just the theme of consciousness at the time and the voices that were surrounding me at the time were saying that our photos needed to be altered in this app before they were good enough to be shared. And this app maybe smoothed your complexion and whitened your teeth and brightened your eyes, made your eyelashes a little darker, just some things like that. This is what the app did. And I was using the app because I was feeling like if I didn't use the app, that it was not good enough, that I could only be seen if I had this filter on my photos. And so even thinking back, because I was using Facebook at the time, even thinking back to Facebook, pictures I was posting even were going through this app. And so I know that the photos that I used on the profile for the dating app also they were using these like filters. And so now that's one thing. That was a big shift. I don't use the filters on my photos because you can see my pores. It's okay. I'm okay with it. And, sometimes filters are fun. It's fun to play. And I love the editing stuff. You can do cool stuff, but also it is 100% cool to post a photo or video directly off my camera roll, like just raw, just like that, and that's good enough too. And I'm really grateful. That's part of the self-love journey that's come with that. But so let's go back to the profile with the filtered photos. But so I did that and met people. And look, I met some really amazing men. They were great men. They were nice men. Like, they're cool men. However, what I realized was I started repeating old patterns from before that relationship, that 15-year relationship. I started falling back into those patterns of promiscuity, like being promiscuous, sleeping with people on the first date, things like that. And then I ended up in one situation that was like, I'm calling it a situationship. And it was someone who, yes, I cared for, and we cared for each other. However, I'm going to call it what it was. It was a situationship, right? And that was for the better part of a year, for 10 months. And while love was present, I still hadn't done any healing. And we had so much chemistry, and we were also not meant to be together, right? And it was an on again, off again, on again, off again. And it wasn't dating. We I think went somewhere together 2 times. However, we were together every night for 10 months, right? When we were on the on again part, which was most of it. But the off again was really bad when it was an off again, right? But then the chemistry was so great, and especially coming from a relationship where, like I said, that marriage was loveless for the last 5 years, really, because he and I, energetically, we weren't aligned. Not because of him, not because of me, just we weren't aligned, right? And I know at one point, I remember him telling me while we were married, at this point I'm talking about, and him telling me that I made him feel like I was a prostitute. And I remember at the time being like, what? Like, so why would you say that to me? And he went on to say, because, I pretty much have to beg you to come in here. You pull down your pants, we have sex, you pull them back up, and then you leave and go back to work. And y'all, that's kind of what it had gotten to be like. And I remember at that point in my life having many girlfriends who we were like we all were at this point in our relationships where it was like we didn't want to have sex with our husbands. And it was like when they would start complaining enough that we weren't having sex, then it was just like, okay, we have to do it, and this will last for a little bit. And I remember that was common. And guys, we're going to get into this later, but that shouldn't be common. And if that's where you are in your relationship, I promise you there's more for you out there, for both of you. For both of you. Both parties involved. If that's where you're at, right? So he and I weren't communicating, and we weren't vibrating on the same frequency. Energetically, we weren't aligned, and I didn't know what any of that stuff meant back then. So I didn't know about masculine and feminine. I didn't know about wounded energies and how all that integrated. I didn't know how all that played out. I lacked self-awareness. I didn't understand my triggers and traumas and how inner child, like what? Father wounds, mother wounds. I had not even heard of any of this stuff. So this wasn't anything at the time that I was aware of. We were just in it, and it was really hard, and there was a lot of resistance. And it was a challenging place to be for both of us, right? My women, I understand this now, for the feminine to fully open, it has to feel safe within this, like, the safety of the masculine structure, right? And so when the women don't feel safe within that masculine, they don't open up fully, like the flower that they are, right? And the river, the flow that they are. And so it needs that strong, safe, masculine container to hold the flow. And then at the same time, like, everyone in the relationships, everyone needs their needs to be being met. And that just wasn't happening, right, on both ends. And so this isn't me. This is me just sharing that's where we were in our marriage, not just because of him and not just because of me. That's just where we had gotten, right? That's where we were. That's the reality of it. And gotten there with little awareness of how we had gotten there at the time. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like the hindsight is 20/20 vision. Now I go back and do the work and I'm able to see, but when I was in it, I wasn't seeing it. So here we are. We've wait, where are we? So, because I might have gotten off on a tangent. So let's bring it back. So, situationship, and I'm okay. The marriage. I was talking about the end of the marriage, feeling like just for both of us, it was loveless. There wasn't the passion, anything. So here I was in this situationship where there was so much passion and so much chemistry and all of this stuff. And it was in so many ways exactly what I needed. However, it really became apparent to me through some of the off agains parts and just some other things that were happening that that I continued, that I kept finding myself in these relationships that weren't really what I wanted, that were, I kept attracting the same types of men, and I was repeating the same types of patterns and the same types of behaviors, and it was over and over, and they had different names or maybe different careers or they looked different, but it was like the same man. I was like just kept attracting the same type of relationships, the same types of situations, the same types of behaviors from them. And I realized that the constant in all of these is me. And actually, I had done one of the things that helped lead me to this was to the point that I was started doing a little research. I was really becoming concerned, what is going on? And I came across Matthew Hussey. Have y'all heard of him? And I think that was actually, he was my first coach, the first one that I was or that I was I need to specifically listen to what this man is talking about on this topic, because there is something here for me. I need to figure out why I am the way I am. What am I doing? What's going on here? What's going on? And I think that was really where my shift happened, where I was able to take accountability, and realized that it was me. It was me. I was the one that was going to have to change. And that what I've said so often is that instead of looking for the right person, I have to become the right person. And I was listening. I was really influenced at the time too. I was listening to Danda Pani. He's a monk, and I've mentioned this before, talking about, you get really good at what you practice. And if you practice distracting yourself, you're going to get really good at distracting yourself. And here's the thing that I also recognized, that I was addicted to sex. And I was using sex kind of like a drug, right? In the sense of I was using it to escape reality. I was using it to numb. I was using it to stroke the ego. I was using it to escape reality, to all of the things. And I was using it for instant gratification, and it was every day and often, and it was just also the way that it was happening. So I saw the potential when I was studying some of these monks, and the idea that what if I explored a celibacy journey? What if instead of giving my energy out that way, my sexual energy, because right about the time I was making this decision is when yoga found me. And my introduction was kundalini. And I believe that when that initial kundalini awakening was happening, all at the same time that I was like on the Matthew Hussey train, looking that stuff up, watching his YouTubes, realizing, oh, hey, I'm the problem, it's me. You know what I mean? And like going, okay, it's time. It's time for me to heal the part of myself that lacks self-worth and lacks self-love. And it's time for me to love myself. I mean, what am I even doing here, right? Like, I'm out here chasing and settling, and what I really want, the love that I really want, I have to give to myself first. Like, I didn't even love myself in the way I wanted other people to love me. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I've never done it before, but like this, I can do this. And I don't even think, okay, going into it, I do have a funny story about that, but it wasn't like the day I decided to begin the celibacy journey. It wasn't like I said, I'm going to do this for X amount of time. I didn't set a time on it. I just was like, no, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. And at the time, still, the situationship was the on again, off again. And so this was a decision I made that was not going, I was not going to continue to entertain that relationship, and that I was going to be on the celibacy journey. And I had this ring that was really meaningful to me. 2 years before the marriage ended, my husband at the time had gone outside of the marriage, and we worked through it. Initially, though, when I first found out, my initial reaction was I sold my wedding ring and hired a divorce attorney. That was like the initial reaction, the very first thing I did. And then he went and stayed with a friend for a while, and then we worked through things. And again, I've already told y'all, I'm not putting this all on him, because I told y'all that was 2 years before the marriage ended, that the last 5 years it was a loveless, passionless marriage. So this was, there were lots of things that we did not address that led up to this point. This is not something that, there was lots that led up to this, and we didn't address it. Okay, I'm going to say that. So, we separated, we worked through some things, and then we decided we had 2 young children that we're going to try again, right? And we came back together, and we were living together again, and we were married still and doing the family thing. And I didn't have any kind of wedding ring. And so I had this custom ring made from Etsy. I found this seller, and it was amazing. And so I had this ring made that I just thought was beautiful, and I had it made for myself. And I wore it. I wore it on my left finger in the marriage, and it was not my wedding ring, but it was a ring I had made for myself. And now it was a commitment that I was in this marriage committed to seeing what we could do to, if this was going to work for us. And when we divorced, I took the wedding ring. I took that ring that I had made. I quit wearing it on my left finger, and it went into my jewelry box for the next year. And that's when I did all the dating, became promiscuous, the situationship. And then when I decided that fall of 2016 that I was going to embark on the celibacy journey, I pulled that ring back out and I put it back on my left finger. And this time I wore it as a promise ring. And now I was in a committed relationship with myself. And this ring, it did a couple things for me. I did not want to appear available because I was not available. And I recognized that emotionally I was not available. And no part of me, I knew that at this point I had become self-aware enough to recognize and understood enough about how energy and manifestation and all of the stuff, attraction works, that if I were to attract someone from that energetic place, it would not be an aligned, I didn't want that. I didn't want to attract someone from that place that there was a lot of work that I wanted to do. Like I said, instead of looking for the right person, I wanted to become the right person. So A, I didn't even want to appear available. And B, it was a reminder, if the ex or anybody else was to call or text or email or send a message, it was just like my little visual reminder not to answer, not to reply, not to give in to that instant gratification, that momentary, whatever the habit, whatever it was, to get the fix, whatever it was, that I was committed to a bigger picture. And there was something that meant more to me than any of those little momentary things. And look, there were some moments in there where of that year, right? There were a couple little moments where it was like I almost felt myself was going to give in, and then maybe a little something happened, and if we were going to, the date got pushed back to the next day, and I was like, that's fine. And then you sleep on it and realize, okay, never mind. I'm good where I was. Thanks, but no thanks, right? And look, that happens, and that's good. And I was on this journey, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll get to it. But here's what I'm saying. So I wore the ring, the promise ring, and this was my journey for a year. Dive deep into the inner work, really learn how to love myself, this intentional journey of self, understand, start to develop more of a sense of self-worth and understand why I was doing, saying, and thinking the things I was, and just all of the stuff, right? And about a year into the celibacy journey, I started to feel like, I'm not sure if this is, it was 1 year, and I had done it for a year, and it was amazing. And so I started saying, well, maybe the 1 year was it, right? Maybe I'd do it for a year. I don't know. And I just happened to, not go out looking, but just happened to maybe meet someone, went on a date here, went on a date there, or whatever. And that maybe happened 2 times, enough for me to say, I don't know, maybe I could just do the friends with benefits thing. And I spent a couple weeks trying to convince myself that was a good idea, to call someone from my past that I had, been intimate with in the past, to propose this idea and to try to gauge if I felt like they were in a place where they could handle this emotionally and it be not a thing and it just be like cool and conscious. And so after about 2 weeks of trying to convince myself that, yeah, this was a good idea, I moved forward on the call and made the arrangements and tried one time and realized that no, this is like not what I want to do, right? And I wasn't mad at myself about it. I didn't even really feel like I was still on the celibacy journey. I realized that. And I realized it was a journey. Like, it was a journey. And sometimes we take a little path that like leads us the wrong way. Then we get back on the path, right? And it was a one-time situation with someone that, you know, I did care for, that was someone that was already from my past. So I was like, yeah, I'm still on the celibacy journey. I definitely know this is not what I want. However, I'm still on the celibacy journey. What I did do, though, was like, I'm not going to, I stopped wearing the ring that I was wearing. So I'd wore it for a year and I had shared about it online and written about the story and what it meant and why I was wearing it and everything. And when I had sex a year into the journey one time, but I realized, well, I'm not going to wear the ring anymore because that was just kind of my turning point for that. It was a shifting point and I'm still on the journey. And so I continued on and stayed on the celibacy journey. And 1 year later, 1 year after that, there was this unexpected situation that was like, I call it a one night situation. Again, just something that happened. And I had sex one night. And here's the thing about this one. This one I didn't see coming. This I didn't spend 2 weeks planning for. This one completely caught me off guard. And it was around the holidays, around my birthday, and it was a whole year plus later after the last time. And absolutely after that time, I was like dedicated to this journey. Nothing was happening. And I felt so much shame come up for this one for like 2 years, guys, if I'm being honest. I really beat myself up for that one because I felt like I had cheated on myself and I had given into this moment, like that I had even allowed myself to be in a situation where this had happened. And here's the thing. I mean, I'm an adult and at the end of it, is it really a big deal? It wasn't. Was it? However, my perception of it, what at the time was that I was really disappointed in myself because of what my promise and commitment to myself was at that time. And then the circumstances under which this happened and everything, it was just, I felt disappointed in myself. And unfortunately, even with all the tools that I have, I really allowed that it sat with me for a while, for a really long while, where I felt shame around it and I would kind of it wasn't like constant all day, every day, but when it would come up, and it was an unhealed for sure. And when it would come up, I would feel so cringe and so shame about it. And I would push it down. And finally, about 2 years later, I hired a therapist specifically to help me move through this situation. And it was wonderful, right? And it was good. And you can do that. You can, hire someone for situational things. And I recognized that I needed the support. And I actually used, it was good. And we'll talk later. Let me pull this out. We'll talk later about how that helped. So I stayed there until I've actually written a blog post about, probably 2 of them, about the therapy. And there's a whole blog post about my celibacy journey. It's actually a really great blog post. I'll link it in the show notes. And the therapist that I met with related to that time. Like I think my very first blog post is something that came from one of my sessions with her. So that was that. And that was 2 years in. And then for the next 7+ years, for the next 5+ years, almost 5.5 years, that was it. There was no intimacy of any kind with anyone. And I wasn't dating or doing any of the things. And then in the full moon of February of 2024, I had my art show for Mise en Brace, which is one of my collection. Maybe you've heard me talk about it before. We won't talk about it too much here, but I did have the opening night reception for that on the full moon on February 24th of 24. It was exceptional. It was so amazing. I'm grateful for every one of you that were there. It was so wonderful. And then following this, I was not on the celibacy journey anymore. And I wrote about it and I shared about it online. And it was not because I had met someone or because I had sex or anything like that or become sexually active. It was just because I realized that it was over. It had served its purpose. I had done what I needed to do on the celibacy journey, fulfilled what I needed to fulfill, and I was ready to release that, to create space for the next thing, right? The next chapter of my life. So that's how the celibacy journey ended. It ended because it no longer, I was talking about it when I was giving a speech. It was relevant to what I was talking about. And when I said it like that I was on it, I was like, oh, it's not resonating. I'm not on it anymore. And it was such a beautiful release. And it was such a beautiful way for that chapter of my life to close. Now, everything that's happened since the closing of that, again, that's going to be a whole nother episode. We're not even going to get into that today, but we're going to talk about this other stuff. So when I told you about my childhood, these early experiences and the environment, I want you to hear how things like that, your early experiences, the environment in which someone can grow up, it can significantly impact their relationships and their self-perception and their behavioral patterns in adulthood. And it certainly did for me. And so I'm going to tell you some of like the key connections between what I believe were my childhood experiences and my behaviors later in life, right? For one, the lack of open communication about sex and bodies. So like when you're growing up in an environment where there's little discussion about sex or the body, it's going to create a sense of shame or confusion about these topics. And this can lead to a desire to explore sexuality in ways that feel rebellious or compensatory, right? And for me, I think engaging in this promiscuous behavior was like some sort of way to reclaim control over my body and sexuality in the absence of guidance or healthy modeling. And another thing I remember, now my parents, again, they loved us, they love each other, but affection, we weren't an affectionate house. It wasn't a lot of love and playful affection and cuddling and hugging and kissing and loving, all of that, right? And so I used to feel really uncomfortable. Like, let's say a TV show or a movie was on and there was a scene where there was intimacy or they were kissing. I would feel so embarrassed. And especially if my parents were in the room, it was like I wanted to crawl under the carpet. You know what I'm saying? And so that discomfort likely stems from this lack of exposure to healthy expressions of love and affection in the family, the immediate family. And this can manifest in adulthood as this overwhelming desire for connection or validation through the sexual encounters, especially if you hadn't really experienced affectionate relationships when you were a child. And I've talked before, if y'all have heard that episode on, validating yourself, about letting your light shine. That's the episode. And that you have to validate yourself. And I think, again, definitely validation was coming from all of these partners. Definitely. Modeling relationships. So growing up without healthy relationship models can lead to difficulties in understanding what a loving partnership looks like. So if you end up in a relationship, let's say with a partner, and it's an unhealthy, the dynamics of the relationship are not healthy, right? There's name calling, there's shaming, there's emotional, verbal, and I'm saying anyone could be in a relationship like this, right? And if you have a partner like that, it may suggest that you've internalized unhealthy dynamics as normal. And this pattern can stem from witnessing relationships where affection and emotional support were absent. And it would lead you to gravitate towards similarly unhealthy partners because it's what's familiar. And so that's a contributing factor, right? And then okay, as far as the response to trauma or unfulfilled needs, if you think about engaging in promiscuity as also being this response to unmet emotional needs, again, particularly if affection and validation were lacking in your formative years. So the pursuit of these relationships serves as this misguided attempt to fulfill these needs, which leads to a cycle of seeking out validation in ways that are ultimately unfulfilling. And when I think of, okay, so there were two periods of my life, once as a teenager and once as an adult, where I was on the promiscuous path. And if I think about when it happened as an adult, and it was the aftermath of this loveless marriage, and after spending, years that way, and then it almost showing up as this, meaning my promiscuous behavior, almost showing up and representing this struggle for self-identity and autonomy after because there were a lot of times I felt stuck in that marriage, not because of him, but because of things I've shared before. Like, you, even if you weren't happy, just felt like I have to stay because my kids, or we have businesses, we have this house, we have all of this stuff, or because I don't want to be a failure, or I don't want, just whatever, all the reasons that we stayed, even though neither of us were happy, we stayed. So we kind of felt stuck there, both of us stuck in a marriage, right? So it was like a way, it represented maybe me being promiscuous. That go round represented this struggle for, again, self-identity and autonomy after feeling like I had just been trapped or controlled or in a certain way. And also could have been and indicated this desire for me to reclaim my sexuality and freedom, but without the emotional maturity or healthy coping mechanisms to navigate it effectively. Because again, I hadn't done that work yet. And I didn't even know what EQ was at that time, your emotional intelligence, right? Like I hadn't become aware of that yet. And I think, this decision to embark on this 7+ year celibacy journey really reflected a significant shift in self-awareness and this desire for personal growth. And I recognized that the patterns were not serving me and chose to focus on becoming the right person instead of seeking validation from external sources. And I did this as a way to address the emotional wounds that I had and develop a healthier relationship with myself and my sexuality. And I did it because I had 2 young daughters. I got really close to the mic on that. I have 2 young daughters, right? And I realized that what am I doing? What am I doing? And I want to be better for myself, for them. I know I deserve better. And it was just a matter of learning, how do you do it? And for me, the celibacy journey created this really safe space, this safe container for me to do this work that I know I had to do. I knew I had to do it. And I was ready to do it. I was so tired of feeling the way I felt. I was so sick and tired of saying if you've listened to earlier episodes, remember I wrote love stories for a living for years. And so it's like I'm dreaming of the love story and I want the love story, and I am just ending up in one unhealthy situationship after another, right? And you know what I'm doing? I'm just doing the same thing. I'm sleeping with them right away, and I'm putting what am I even doing? And so I was ready for a change. And that's what I did, right? And the development of healthy boundaries that came with this journey towards celibacy, it indicated a movement towards establishing healthier boundaries and understanding my own needs and desires beyond physical intimacy. And it was an opportunity for self-discovery and healing past trauma and redefining my sense of self-worth and relationships. And I think that, if you think about it in the terms of the interplay between my childhood experiences and my adult behavior, my teen and adult behaviors, it reflects a complex response to unmet emotional needs and maybe a lack of healthy modeling to some extent, and a journey of self-discovery and healing. And by recognizing the patterns and choosing the path of celibacy and self-improvement, I was intentionally working towards a healthier and more fulfilling relationship with myself and others in the future. And one of the beautiful things that happened, and look, now I've completely healed and no longer, I love the version of myself I was able to find gratitude for the one night situation instead of the shame that I allowed myself to feel, because I was really hard on myself, really too hard on myself for that. But I was hard on myself for it. And I understand why, and I see where I was coming from. And again, that was part of my journey. And now I'm able to look back at that with gratitude, because it was it played a significant part in me becoming the woman I am today, just the navigating through it and after it and everything else. And another reason I'm grateful for the celibacy journey is because part of it was, yes, I was like, I've got to be on this. I'm not ready to date. I am not ready to date, but there was this part of me that was like, if magic happened, if the universe delivered the most incredible, wonderful man ever on a, like, here he is, and he's just for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that would have happened, then I know there was a part of me that was like, believed in the possibility that could happen, that you could align with your person, right? And that could have happened over the celibacy journey. And however, and if it would have unfolded the way it was meant to unfold it. However, that's not the way it played out. What was wonderful about being on it, though, is because I was on it, let's say someone did come into my awareness. Because I had made this commitment to myself and being on the celibacy journey, and not seeking the external validation from the external sources, and being interested in developing healthier relationships, just like all of the things. And I just was interested in understanding my needs and desires beyond the physical intimacy, because I know what can happen, especially for me, especially somebody who, like I said, was addicted to sex before. And I know that, like, if there's this incredible person that I know that there can be a strong sexual connection, but there's so much that I was doing in my life with my children, with my careers, with my healing, or with my journey, not even healing, which is my living, like living life, like truly living my favorite life. And yes, doing some healing, but also enjoying living. And I'm doing all these things and just recognizing that I like being on the celibacy journey. I like having that because it felt so safe for me, because I could see things for what they were. I could see people for who they were. And I would have known at any point in time, right, if there was something there that I wanted to explore deeper. But because that was there, it really I wanted to be in integrity with who I said I was, so I wasn't crossing a line. And because I didn't cross that line too soon, like I had a habit of doing in the past, really quickly. And when you do that really quickly and you just jump right in and you give in to those sexual pulls and you give in to that, chemistry that can definitely be there for some people. And if you do that immediately, then all of that, the sex, SEX, sacred energy exchange, everything is energy. And I didn't realize it back when I was having casual sex, so much casual sex, that no wonder I felt the way I felt so often, because you're exchanging energy and it lingers. It's like a sex hangover, and it's an energetic hangover. And when you exchange energy with your partner, that's, you're mingling your energy with theirs, and their energy and whatever they've been carrying for the last couple days, it's coming into your energetic field, and it's all meshing, and you're taking that on, and they're taking some of your energy, or you're giving it, or all of this stuff's happening. And if you're doing it consciously, it's this beautiful, sacred, divine, amazing, incredible energetic exchange. And when you're not doing it consciously, it can be really draining to you, and it can affect you in more ways than you maybe even realize. And so I'm grateful for that, for allowing me to get to know people and I think it also allowed me to heal and be able, it was so wonderful the way I was able to heal and really be able to develop some deep, meaningful connections with men. And I loved it because there was always such a very clear boundary that this is what it is. There's no expectation here. Nothing's going to happen. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was just, nope, this is what it is. This is where I am. And I loved it. Took the pressure off of it for me. It allowed me to really not feel any kind of awkwardness or pressure or anything around. I just got to be myself, and I'm so grateful for it. I want to tell you, so that's the story, friends. That's the story. We're stopping at where the celibacy journey ended, because that's what this show is about. And I want to circle back around to the power of Self-Love Week. This is happening Monday, December 9th through Friday, December 13th. And this is going to be a transformative week-long journey designed to empower you to deepen your relationship with yourself and ignite lasting self-love from within. And for 5 days, we're going to gather for live interactive video calls, 1 hour, and each session is going to focus on a unique aspect of self-love, one that is essential for building a resilient foundation in every area of your life. And whether you're just beginning to explore self-love, or you're looking to reinforce your inner confidence and peace, this Power of Self-Love Week is going to offer you daily guidance and practical tools and a supportive community to uplift you every step of the way. And this is free, guys. This is free. I'm doing this because, again, when I was on that celibacy journey, I was like, I'm going to become an expert on self-love. I'm going to become an expert on self-love because I did not love myself. And I was always sick, and I didn't feel good, and life was stressful, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And I was like, no, I'm worth it. I want to love myself and I'm going to figure out how to do it. And even if that means I'm going to, embrace solitude for the better part of a decade, which that was the funny story I was going to tell y'all earlier. When I was like 6 months in, not even 6 months. No, I was early. I was like the beginning of the celibacy journey. Within the first 6 months, I had gone to New Orleans, met this guy. It was this great interaction. And he mentioned something that like I might be on the celibacy journey for a year. And I remember looking at him and being like, yeah, right, a year? And like laughing on the inside, like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I am not going to be on the celibacy journey for a year because my ego at the beginning, this was actually probably the first couple months, maybe. I don't know. I did not. What do you mean? A year? No. He. 7 years later, ... right? So that was pretty funny. And I remember that. But look, this was a mission that I was committed to. I don't know. I guess it was a calling, guys. I don't fucking know. Like, who knows? But it was what happened. And I answered the call. If it was a calling, I answered the call and I did the thing. And I created Self-Love Uni. And you know what? It's really freaking good. And it's good for you because it's not about me. None of this is about me. The celibacy journey, that's my story. I'm telling you why why did you feel called to create Self-Love Uni? Why do you want to help? Well, guys, because I had so little self-love that I was just going out there and I was just doing it. You know what I mean? Literally. But you know what I'm saying? Like I know how it feels to not love yourself and not love the person that you see in the mirror and feel insecure and feel shame and feel cringe and feel unworthy and not lovable and like you're simultaneously too much and not enough, because I know how it feels. And I know how it feels that like all you want is just to feel love, to love somebody and have somebody love you and accept you for who you are. And I know and I get it. And you want to feel peace when you put your head on your pillow at night, right? You want to go to bed with a clear conscience and you want to have a restful night's sleep and you want to wake up with a heart full of gratitude, excited to start the day because you have a life you can't wait to wake up to. And this is possible. And this is it's possible for you. And Self-Love Uni, it meets you where you are, and it's for everyone. It transcends age, gender, race, nationality, culture, religion, any of that, anything that you might think divides us, that transcends it. And it's just about the nature of being human and how to love yourself. And it's the most important thing because the relationship that you have with yourself is the most important relationship that you will ever have in your entire life. Because you are the one person that you will spend every moment of every day with for your entire life. You are. And so if you have a toxic relationship with yourself, friends, it's not going to serve you well. And if you have a really healthy, positive relationship with yourself, that is going to influence and impact the quality of every other relationship in your life. But you got to start with the relationship that you have with yourself. So that's why I'm doing the Power of Self-Love Week. I want everyone to join for this free transformative week. You can sign up. I'm going to include this in the show notes, but I'm going to tell you how you sign up for free. For free, you sign up at whatchawant.us/SLU live. And what cha, CHA, want, whatchawant.us, a slash, backslash, forward slash, I'm not sure which way, SLU live. And that's where you're going to go to sign up. And it's going to be Monday, December 9th through Friday, December 13th, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. It's going to go for an hour. And we're going to do that for 5 days, for the whole week. And I can't wait to see you there. And thank you for being here. And I love you. I'll see you next time, friends. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It. I hope today's episode sparked something powerful within you. Remember, every step you take towards your vision counts, no matter how small. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please take a second to hit that subscribe button or leave a review. That would be amazing. Or share the podcast with someone who's ready to bring their dreams into reality too. And if you're looking to dive deeper, connect with me on social media at Dreamed It, Then Real Lifed It, or at BE_whatchawant. Or visit dreameditthenreallifedit.us for more resources on aligning your life, business, and dreams. Until next time, keep dreaming and keep manifesting your dreams into real life. Love you, friends.